what is the significance of a Redmi Note series for the company, and what is one single factor behind the success of this series according to you?
Hmm. Okay. Thanks, Arup. Again, good to kind of catch up with you.
Thank you, thank you.
First time that we are connecting. So talking about the Redmi Note series, I think the single significance, if I could probably put it as, I'll try and put it in a as brief of concept as possible. Redmi Note has always been the hero for the people,
Okay.
right? Redmi Note over the years has enabled, in a large part, the entire creator economy that we see across the country, right? Whether it's in the metros, whether it's tier one, tier two, or going even to the smallest, corners of the country. And the second part is it's been extremely it's been an extremely important pillar for the entire digital India economy that you see. It's just so that when India was kind of switching over to the entire digitized way, whether it's for education, whether it's for payments, Redmi Note always was the center point there. It was always the recommended device to kind of get you on there. And there are obviously multiple reasons why that happened. But in a nutshell, it's always been the hero for the people. Uh, for us, obviously, it's extremely important. It was one of our first few devices. In fact, that Xiaomi is 8.5 years old, and we're talking about Redmi Note series being 8 years today. So it's been a close knit journey. So I can probably say that the success of Xiaomi is very, very closely tied with the success of the Note series. Uh, and over the years, it's constantly been redefining what it means, what consumers could get out of it, and of course, what was offered.
Yeah, so you talked about that the success of Redmi Note and Xiaomi go along side by side. So now, since Redmi became a separate brand, how has been a response towards the Redmi brand specifically? And I would really like you to support your answer with some numbers and all.
Sure. So I probably would say that unlike Poco, which was hyped off and they run as an independent brand, Redmi is still part of the entire Xiaomi umbrella. So very, very close knit there. Uh, so it's still, you know, it still kind of borrows a lot of success from Xiaomi, and it obviously pays back in multiply. Uh, but over the last 2 odd years, first back in 2020, uh, we first started the strategy of having a phone plus aspect. So which is till then, so from 2014 till 2019, Redmi was known only for phones, right? There was nothing else that you could buy from Redmi. So
Sure,
in
sure.
2020, the phone plus strategy came in, which was essentially all devices that are connected to the phone. We started off with the TWS or the earbuds. That expanded into a few wearables. But then last year, which is 2021, and this year is where we really stepped it up. So we've launched the Redmi laptops, Redmi Notebook, which has done fairly well. Uh, Talking about laptops, this is a natural extension. We also got into tablets. So the Redmi
Sure.
Pad was launched in October of this year. Uh, and then beyond this, we've also launched TVs. So from a TV perspective, if you were watching the lists during Diwali,
Sure.
Redmi TVs were the number one selling TVs in Amazon for almost the entire Diwali period. Uh, for us to have gone from not having a TV, right? So that Redmi as a brand did not exist in the TV space to becoming the number one seller in just a year, obviously was a pretty good testament in terms of its if it's working or not. So closely, if I could kind of talk about from a numbers perspective, I think I can't give you the exact numbers. That if will only be there if it's included in our investor reports because we are a listed company.
Sure.
But we are, across the board wherever we've got a Redmi product, it's accounting for at least about a quarter to a third of our overall sales in the new categories. Obviously, from a phone perspective, it is massive.
Sure, sure. Now, you mentioned Poco, and so we use a word called cannibalism, right? When we talk about phones or products that are under the same umbrella company but are marketed differently. So how does Xiaomi manage that cannibalism when it comes to Redmi brand, Redmi phones, and then Poco phones? Because the price segment is almost the same.
Mhm. Uh, so Poco is a little different from how Xiaomi and Redmi work. So Poco stands independent, and I
Mhm.
guess the cost of that independence is that they are a competitor.
Sure.
So we treat Poco as a competition. Sometimes it would be Redmi taking away share from Poco. Sometimes it could be the other way around. But that is how any market should work. Uh, at the end of it, I think it's good for brands to be competitive. I think it's also good for the consumers to have competitive brands in the market.
So do you want to comment on the brand preference by Indian users specifically when it comes to Redmi and Poco?
Well,
And what could be the reason for people choosing Redmi brand over Poco or the other way around?
so I can't really talk for Poco right now, considering that I am now in Xiaomi.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be fair, but from a Xiaomi perspective, or the Redmi Note perspective, like I said, Xiaomi's always been the hero for the people, right? If I look at it, back in 2014, you couldn't get a good device under 15-20,000 rupees.
Yeah.
And then when Redmi Note came in and the Redmi 1S came in, actually when the Xiaomi Mi 3 came in, it changed things significantly. If I go to the next one, which is 2016,
Hmm.
there was a phone called the Redmi Note 3, and it redefined what a mid-segment phone could do in terms of performance.
Sure.
Uh, it also somehow overlapped with the Geo 4G rollout, and what people realized was that this device, the Redmi Note 3, you know, was having things like VoLTE, which even the more expensive devices did not have, right? So that built up a lot of trust in the entire system there. Coming into 2018, 19, 20, we started focusing a lot on the cameras.
Hmm.
So if I look at a mid-segment phone today, if you're looking for a camera device, chances are that it'll be a Redmi Note. So it further kind of improved the recommendation of the Note series, where people already knew that this was almost like a people's champion, but it also was delivering on things that were going beyond what the basic requirements were. Last year, which was 2021, we switched the entire Redmi Note series into Super AMOLEDs.
Hmm.
Uh, Kind of a weird choice at that time because it is an expensive aspect. It also took the product costs up, but because people are consuming more and more content, I'm sure, right? If today, if I go and ask Geo Cinema how many people are watching your World Cup on TV versus phone, I can, without knowing the number, I can say it will probably be 90% on phones. When you're watching more and more content on your phones, you need a great display. So that's where it's coming. So over the years, uh, for the people and hence for the industry, the Note series has always been the beacon, and this is where I think the preference for the Redmi and the Redmi Note series has always been going up.
Sure. I'll just take another leaf out of your previous answer, where you talked about Redmi being a smartphone brand previously and then expand into other, I mean, features.
Other
So,
devices.
yeah, other devices. So, what about Redmi's IoT strategy and ecosystem, that's as we call it, and how do you ensure the product differentiation between Xiaomi products there?
So with Xiaomi products, it's always looking at the latest and greatest technology, right? So for example, if I'm looking at a TV, uh, the Xiaomi TV, Xiaomi has a OLED TV as well.
Hmm.
There's a Xiaomi Vision, which is a OLED TV. That goes up. That's at about 90,000 rupees. It's probably the best TV that you can buy under that segment. Or if I look at laptops, the Xiaomi laptops are the ones, the recent 120G model that was launched, the Xiaomi Notebook Pro. That's
Hmm.
bringing in like a 120 hertz display. It's bringing in the latest and greatest technology. When it comes to Redmi, it becomes more of you pick one or two technologies which people really, really care about, but you don't have to go, you know, crazy on all aspects, but you give people something that a large part of which can sit in the middle of the market, say around the ASP of that particular market, and deliver. So this is where Redmi comes in. So Redmi and Xiaomi almost become like a ladder system where a lot of people and a lot more people will obviously get to experience Redmi. But if you want the best, then there is Xiaomi.
Okay, sure. So, please tell us something about Redmi's Make in India initiative. Right? You can, specifically talk about Redmi Note uh, while talking about this question, right?
Sure, sure. So this is an interesting one, Saurabh. I don't know if you know about this. Uh, One of the first phones that were ever made in India were actually a Redmi, uh, or probably the first. So in the entire industry, right, when everyone else was still importing devices, both international brands as well as local brands, uh, we set up a particular factory, and the Redmi 2 Prime very closely followed with the Redmi Note Prime back in 2015 were the first devices that started rolling out. So they were essentially the first few phones or first few smartphones that you could have bought that were actually made in India. So from there, our journey has obviously become stronger. Over the years, we've been working with multiple partners to ensure that more than 99% of the phones that you buy today are all manufactured locally. Uh, and of course, going beyond that, now we are looking at how do we get our component suppliers to manufacture locally in India, and how do we get our manufacturing units to not just supply for India but for other countries as well. So how can we kind of create India as a manufacturing base for some of the other countries who are obviously into who are carrying our brand?
Okay, so I would like to know some nitty-gritties when you said manufacturing in India, 99% phones. So, I mean, what parts or what percentage of parts are actually manufactured in India, and what percentage of parts are being imported from China or other countries?
Hmm. I could probably talk about what is being made in India.
Yeah.
And just to kind of be absolutely sure, I'm going to refer to my notes.
Hmm.
Uh, so some of the key components, right, such as camera. So camera is being sourced locally, or
Hmm.
chargers are being sourced locally, or the cables that go with it. Uh, all the power banks that we are making obviously becomes a natural extension of that aspect. So they come in locally. The mechanical chassis that is a large part, and that's what obviously is putting this entire thing together. That is sourced locally. So from a overall components being sourced locally, you've got the PCBA, camera, sensors, battery, cables, the entire mechanical chassis, which is basically front covers and back covers. It's almost close to about 70% of the value of the device that is also local.
Sure.
There are certain aspects that you cannot, unfortunately, source locally. For example, most of the chips, the processors that you get, are either coming in from TSMC or coming in from Samsung Electronics.
Sure. Sure.
So those are certain aspects that we are missing out on. Looking at the recent trends and recent government directives, we are obviously quite hopeful that we'll get to see India stepping into the semiconductor space also pretty soon. So, okay, fingers crossed about that.
You talked about how Redmi is jumping to new trends, and talking about new trends, we have 5G here. So on 5G, what is company's strategy in India when it comes to smartphone launches? And given that competitors have already announced that they'll be making 5G only phones going forward and all. So your plans for the company, and especially are we looking at 5G only Note series phones?
To the last part, yes.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, for I think the last 2 years have been quite complex in terms of portfolio planning for all of us because 5G wasn't there, but it was supposed to come. But 4G was the dominant aspect, and there were a set of consumers who wanted 5G, but there were a lot of people who said, because there was no 5G, give us a 4G device itself. We don't want to pay extra for a 5G. Uh, just a same phone, but if you switch from a 4G to a 5G, you are looking at an increase of about $50 to $60 in terms of cost. So that's something that not everyone will be comfortable with. So really happy and probably relieved that we now have 5G services rolling out, and I'm quite excited to see the pace of the rollout, right? Going from the overall auction that happened just a few months ago to already being able to experience 5G, unlike what happened on the 4G side. So with this rollout, it becomes easier for us to manage our portfolio. So especially beyond a particular price point, where we can, we will try and switch all to a 5G. So at least for the Note series, for the last 2 years, we've had a combination of 4G and 5G notes coexisting. This year, we don't need to. So we will move the entire Note series hopefully into 5G
uh, in next year.
in the next year.
Sure.
So the next version of that will be, but uh, for the overall brand, because you still have to kind of cater to a lot of people. Like if I was to create a sub 200 or sub $150 phone today, which is a 5G device, but it is a good 5G device or a good phone that you will be able to use beyond your 5G aspects, that's still very, very hard, right? And if I'm adding, say, close to about $50, $60 just for the 5G aspect, which could mean that if there's a phone that I'm selling at 7,000 rupees, will automatically with that kind of a spec list or that kind of experience will go up to a 10, which might be a bit of a stretch. So we'll have to play it by the year, look at if there are any more improvements in terms of 5G component costing, and then see if we can kind of bring it to more and more people. So for the overall brand, we'll still kind of balance between 4G and 5G. But because Note is mid premium, for Note, we'll be able to move it to 5G completely.
Sure. So are you planning any bundled tie-up for 5G with telecom operators and
Uh, I don't, I've not seen a bundled offer for a long time uh, on the telco side, but it could be interesting to kind of explore this. We'll probably talk to them and see what can be done.
Sure. Thank you, Anuj, for talking with us. And it was a great pleasure connecting with you. And I look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Sure,
Sure.
absolutely. Would love to catch up again soon. Thanks,
Sure.
Saurabh.